press conference or something. Before we get started in Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dear Venerable Abbot, dear Sangha, good afternoon. Today we're discussing chapter 3 of the Lotus Sutra, Sadharma Pundarika Sutra. Chapter 3 is one of the longer chapters, actually, and it's very long. And it's very compact with a lot of information. Chapters 3 through 9 are considered the chapters of clear exposition, which means that chapters 3 to 9 are mostly chapters where the Buddha gives some of the most well-known and famous parables. And in chapter 3, we give the parable of the burning house, which is probably one of my favorite stories. So last week, when we first chanted the first section of the Lotus Sutra, chapter 3 was in there. It was very wordy. It was very detailed in examples and the ideas of this burning house. To try to get over to the board without knocking everything over. Jimin, please assist. So, the entirety of the Lotus Sutra gives the example, or gives the teaching of the 3 vehicles. Who wants to remind me what the 3 vehicles are? Nope. Nope. Oh, come on, people. The 3 vehicles are the Shravakas, or the voice hearers, the Praiteka Buddhas, the solitary Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas. These are the 3 vehicles, the 3 types of, or the 3 groups of beings or practitioners that follow the Buddha Dharma. And so we fall under the first vehicle of Shravakas, voice hearers. Voice hearers are the laymen, laywomen, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, right? The four assemblies. So we're part of the Shravakas, of the voice hearers. Voice hearers literally means that we are hearing the voice of the Buddha's words, right? We may not be in his physical presence anymore, nor will we anytime soon, but as a extension of the Buddha's teachings, right? We have the monks and nuns and Dharma teachers that kind of extend the tongue of the Buddha. And so we're part of the Shravakas. So the Shravakas are us that attain enlightenment via listening, via practicing, via chanting and studying. The Praiteka Buddhas are those that have attained enlightenment through the attainment of the 12 links of dependent origination, Paticca Samutpada. And Praiteka Buddhas, although they are enlightened, right, there's the word Buddha in here, but the difference between a Praiteka Buddha and a Samyak Sambuddha is that the Pratitaka Buddhas are this solitary practitioners. So they become enlightened, but they don't have the desire to teach others, right? They're just happy to be enlightened, and they want to go into nirvana, right? They don't want or don't feel they have the capability to teach others. The bodhisattvas are the pre-Buddhas. So technically any practitioner, any person that makes the vow to want to become a Buddha is automatically on the bodhisattva path. And so we can technically be in two places at once. And so the bodhisattvas are the pre-Buddhas. These are beings that are enlightened, but not enlightened to the degree of being a full Buddha. But the bodhisattvas are beings that make the vow to practice and attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And only when all other beings have attained full enlightenment will they officially enter nirvana or enter full Buddhahood. And so the entire Lotus Sutra is revolving around the idea, the concept of these three vehicles, that the entirety of the Buddha's teaching career, he taught of the three vehicles. The Lotus Sutra was one of the last sutras discourses that he preached before he passed. And so in the Lotus Sutra, he tells the disciples, through all these decades of me teaching you, through all these sutras and the discourses I've given you, they all fall under the concept of the three vehicles. I'm teaching you because you fall under one of these three categories. But even though I've taught you the three vehicles, in essence and in truth and trueness, in reality, there's only one vehicle, the Buddha vehicle, Buddhahood vehicle. And so the Buddha used these concepts because each vehicle has a specific category of teachings. So for the Shravakas, he taught the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Three Dharma Seals, and the 12 Links of Dependent Origination. Those are the concepts, those are the core teachings that require any Shravaka to become enlightened, right? The highest attainment for a Shravaka would be an Arhat, right? The fourth of the first four levels of enlightenment. Then the Pratitaka Buddhas simply concentrate and focus on the 12 links, whereas the Bodhisattvas, we practice essentially the Mahayana path and as a whole, as a totality. So in the Mahayana path, our tradition, right, we have that vow to become bodhisattvas ourselves, to become a Buddha. But until we become a Buddha, until the time arrives before we're able to become a Buddha, we practice as bodhisattvas. And we practice by helping others attain enlightenment on our way. And so the Buddha used the Lotus Sutra and other important Mahayana sutras to teach the bodhisattvas. Like one of the first sutras he taught the bodhisattvas was the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Dormant Sutra. And from then he taught the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutras, and then the Lotus Sutra, etc., etc. And so as we read through this chapter, or through the Lotus Sutra as a whole, we see this concept, or we see this teaching the three vehicles constantly. And it's important to know that these three vehicles, the Shravakas, Pratitaka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, aren't just the Shravakas, Pratitaka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, but there's a meaning behind what these three vehicles are. Right? What does the three vehicles actually represent? And what do they actually represent in the sutra? So in many Buddhist texts, you often reference as that the three realms hold no peace, just like a burning house. The three realms that we are describing here are the three realms of existence in samsara. Samsara is the cyclic existence of life that we live in. So there's three realms in this, right? In Buddhist cosmology, there are 31 realms of existence, okay? And in those 31 realms, it's then grouped into three categories of these three realms of existence. We unfortunately fall under the very last one. We're at the bottom, we're the pit. We're the fourth level, we're the fourth realm of the 31. So we're pretty deep in the mud. But anyway, the three realms are then grouped into the realm of desire, the desire realm, is the kama dhatu. Then there's the form realm, the rupa dhatu, and then the formless realm, arupa dhatu. And so we're in the desire realm, the kama dhatu. This is the realm of where we are all subject to the three poisons of ignorance, greed, and anger. And it's only, even when we are able to attain a higher realm of existence, it's still samsara. It's still not enlightenment. We may have better lives, we may be in better situations, we may be better fortunate, but we still are in the realm of samsara. We are still victims of birth and death. And so the chapter, the parable in this chapter is the burning house. And the story of the burning house is that there's this rich man, this rich merchant, who owns this ginormous house that has hundreds of people living in it. But this ginormous house only has one door. And in this ginormous house, his three sons, who are referenced as the three vehicles later on. But he has three sons that are stuck in this house. They're children. And they're playing with their games and their amusements, and, they're playing. They're being kids. But all of a sudden, a fire broke out in the house, right? And so now the fire is engulfing the whole house. It's engulfing all the walls, all the rooms, etc., etc. But it's engulfing the house, right? But because the three kids are so engulfed in their games, they're so obsessed with their games and the toys and what they're doing that they don't even notice that there's a fire, right? And then once the merchant realizes that there's a fire in the house, he's yelling to his kids, children, come out, there's a fire. And the kids are ignoring him, and after a while they finally hear the father, they hear his cries, and they hear his announcement of the fire, but they're like, he's like, what fire? What danger? We don't know what you're talking about. So they just continue playing on. So the merchant then, afraid of his kids dying, he uses an expedient means, right? An expedient means is something we will hear almost in every chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Upaya. Upaya means expedient means. And so he uses expedient means to try to convince the kids to come out. And because he knows what his kids like, he persuades them to come out and offers them and tells them, hey kids, I have these fantastic, glorious carts outside, right? And again, this is back in the Buddha's day. So he's like, I have a cart being drawn by deer, I have one cart drawn by ox, and a cart drawn by something else. Now it's going to bother me. Deer, ox. What is the third one? Is it goat? There we go, and goat. And so apparently one kid likes deer, one kid likes goat, and one kid likes ox, right? And so oh, okay, well, I'll come out now. And so he tells the kids, they're drawn by these animals, they're all different shapes and sizes and colors, and they're adorned with all these fantastic, beautiful looking things. And so the kids finally come out. But then when they come out and they only see one glorious looking cart, drawn by a white ox. And this cart is huge, and it's adorned with the 7 jewels, right? 7 treasures: gold, silver, lapis lazuli, crystal, mother of pearl, red pearl, and carnelian. It's adorned with these 7 jewels. It's adorned with everything that they like. Every little ounce of type of jewel, type of toy, decoration they like is on this cart. And so they get on and amuse themselves, and they get on the cart. Then the father sits down, he sighs in relief. He's like, oh, thank goodness, my kids are safe, right? So this parable is used, and at first glance, especially if you read the full chapter and not the condensed version I have in the Chan book, you'll see that it's very dramatic in its description of this burning house. I've left some of the drama in the shortened version because I wanted to emphasize that drama. But within the drama, can you hand me the book? Should have had that ready. So in the drama, so the halls, though lofty, were in dangerous condition. The base pillars had rotten, beams and rafters were slanting and askew, foundations and steps were crumbling. The roof thatch was in despair or missing, the tips of the eaves had dropped off. Some 500 persons lived in the house. Kites, owls, hawks, eagles, crows, magpies, doves, pigeons, lizards, snakes, vipers, scorpions, centipedes, and millipedes, newts and ground beetles, weasels, raccoon dogs, mice, rats, hordes of evil creatures scurried this way and that. Places that stank of excrement overflowed in streams of filth where dung beetles and other creatures gathered. Foxes, wolves, and jackals gnawed and trampled in filth, or tore apart dead bodies, scattering bones and flesh about. Because of this, packs of dogs came racing to the spot to snatch and tear, driven by hunger and fear, searching everywhere for food, fighting, struggling, seizing, baring their teeth, snarling, howling, etc., etc. So it's a very dramatic scene, right? So it's a dramatic scene because the idea of this burning house is essentially the life that we live. It's this world that we live in, that we are so obsessed, we're so attached to our desires and our whims and toys and things that we play with throughout life that we don't see the danger outside, right? Most people tend to distract themselves with idle stupidity in order to distract the chaos and reality of life, of the world, right? This is how people get addicted to drugs and alcohol, right? Why is addiction even a thing? Why do we feel the necessity? Why do we feel that it's necessary to drink and to consume alcohol, to consume these drugs? It's because they're trying to cover something up, trying to avoid something that's outside of themselves, right? And so once they sober up, they're like, oh no, here's reality again. Let me block it off and go back to drinking, taking more drugs, right? And so we're doing that all the time, whether it's with drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever it may be. There's always something that we're doing to distract ourselves. Whether it's playing games, it's listening to music, it's watching TV, it's aimlessly chatting, idle chatter, anything that you do, right? We have to recognize the way that we live our life and try to be mindful and aware that in moments of boredom, what do? Don't tell me you're never bored. But in moments of boredom, what do? We try to find something to consume that time, to consume that boredom. Boredom is it's an illusion. There's no such thing as boredom. The only reason you're bored is because you cannot handle being by yourself doing nothing. Right? That's why you're bored. I have nothing to do. No one to talk to. Nothing to eat, nothing to drink, nowhere to go. Because you have nothing to do. You're bored. We cannot be by yourself. You can't be by yourself. And so we consume things, TV, entertainment, food, etc., etc. just to fill that void of boredom. Boredom is so funny. I love doing nothing. I love having nothing to do. I never have nothing to do, but when I do, I enjoy those moments. But I remember, before I was a monk, obviously, that I remember times and the things I did and the places I went and just all the activities I did when I felt bored. Unfortunately, well, maybe not really unfortunately, but back in the day when I was bored, I'm like, let's take a trip to California. Let's go to Vegas. Let's go to somewhere. That was my way of feeling boredom. I would travel. So I traveled a lot. Thankfully, I could afford it at the time. So it wasn't a big deal. I traveled a lot. So that's my way of assuaging my boredom, even though it cost me money. But recognize when that happens. Recognize what you do. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? Where is your mind going? How is your mind reacting to boredom? How is it reacting to the world around you? What are you ignoring? What are you pushing away? What are you denying yourself from seeing, from feeling, from observing, from realizing? Right? Because if you're unaware, if you're unmindful, and you're doing things, a lot of times the things that we do in life is just out of habit. It's automatic, it's routine. We wake up, we brush our teeth, we have breakfast, or we get ready for work or school, we go, we drive, we come back, we eat, we sleep, wake up and repeat, right? It's an automatic thing that we do. Because it's automatic, do you remember waking up? Do you remember brushing your teeth in the morning? Do you remember actually putting your clothes on? Do you actually remember driving anywhere? Most of the time, you do not. It's such a mundane thing that we do, but that main mundane activity of just brushing your teeth can be a moment of awakening. Walking meditation, as much as I personally don't necessarily enjoy it, but the act and practice of walking meditation can be completely enlightening. You can become fully enlightened by simply doing walking meditation. How? Why? It's not just the act of walking, but it's the act of acknowledging and knowing that you're walking, how you're walking, where you're walking to, why are you walking, how does the ground feel beneath your feet, how does your skin feel in the air, how does the skin feel in the sun or in the breeze, what is the mind going through, what is the mind thinking of, what is the mind contemplating. There's so much going on by just doing walking meditation. And so if we're able to hone that mind and pinpoint it to samadhi, to one point in its concentration, one specific thing, imagine all the things you can do. Think of studying. If you're a good student, if you know how to study correctly, then when you're studying, if you're at the library, for instance, and if you're correctly studying, you're only focusing on your studies. You're not listening to music, you're not talking to your friends, you're not watching YouTube on your phone while it's on this side and your iPad looking at TikTok and you're doing 10 million things at a time. It's not studying. It's a C student. Who wants to be a C student? I mean, I was. C's get degrees was my motto in the first couple of years of college. But C's didn't get me in grad school. So I had to change my lifestyle. And I got into grad school. It's the same thing with our practice. Buddhism is so comprehensive. There's so much going on in Buddhism. There's so much to know, so much to study and to practice and to just take in. It's oftentimes very overwhelming. There's so much information, it becomes overwhelming. But if we go back to the sutras like the Lotus Sutra, where it's telling us specifically what we can do, how we can do it, and how long it would take. Now, in Buddhist cosmology, time is an unfathomable amount of numbers, right? So we'll see the word kalpa a lot in Buddhist texts, kalpa, K-A-L-P-A, kalpa. Kalpa literally means like an eon. So depending on the source that you read, how Buddhist cosmology is defined, my own definition, a kalpa means an eon of a universe, means a life cycle of a universe. So right now we think of our universe as 14-something billion years old, right? On a kalpa scale, right, if we look at a kalpa as a 12-month calendar, and we're only 14 billion years old, we're only in the first few months of January of this kalpa that we're in, right? And so in the text, in the discourses, we'll see that how there are millions of Buddhas practicing over millions of kalpas, thousands, hundreds of thousands, 10,000 kalpas. If one kalpa is a life cycle of an entire universe can go on for trillions of years before it dies and resets. That's my theory. Imagine how many universes, imagine the number. It's unfathomable. We can't even visualize that big of a number. But it's a huge amount. But anyway, what was my point? My point is that eventually, regardless of how long this kalpa is, regardless of how long we believe at a very relative level of what we think of time, right? We think 100 years is a really long time. But at the cosmic level, 100 years is like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second, right? It means nothing. It's a speck of invisible time. But in the sutras, especially the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha reminds us constantly that eventually we are all destined to be Buddhas. And so at the beginning of this chapter, because at the end of the second chapter where the Buddha declares that everyone will become a Buddha, right? And so there's this acknowledgement, there's this proclamation that everyone will become a Buddha. So at the beginning of the third chapter, Shariputra is having this moment of doubt. He's thinking that, but this entire time the Buddha was teaching us these three vehicles, and that our highest attainment that we can as Shravakas is an Arhat, but now all of a sudden he's saying we can all become Buddhas. So he's a little skeptical. He's like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I mentioned this when I was going over the first chapter, but at the time when the sutra was given, it was said that 3,000 or 30,000, some number with a 3 in it, I'm going to say 3,000. 3,000 disciples got up and left the assembly because they're all like, this is way above us. This is too much for us to comprehend. Becoming Buddhas? Nah, it's impossible. So they literally got up and left. And so when Shariputra announces doubts, he's like, is this really the Buddha telling us to become Buddhas? Or is this Mara pretending to be a Buddha to try to convince us of these evil ways, right? And then the Buddha goes on and Shariputra is convinced, and he gets up and he says that he gets up and feels something about joy. I can't remember what the text verbiage is, but he's convinced, right? And then once he's convinced, the Buddha tells Shariputra that in the future he also will become a Buddha called Flower Glow Buddha. And so now that there's a prediction, right? There's an actual prediction that the Buddha gave Shariputra that he will become a Buddha. The rest of the assembly are convinced too, because they're like, well, if Shariputra, a Shravaka like us, can become a Buddha, then we too can become Buddhas. So the whole assembly at that point had made this vow, made this proclamation that we will become Buddhas. And so everyone in the assembly turned from being Shravakas to Bodhisattvas. Because remember, the moment you make the vow that you want to become a Buddha, you're considered a Bodhisattva. You're on the Bodhisattva path, Bodhisattva yana. And so back to that burning house, going off topic so much. Door, right? And so the three children inside this house represent the three vehicles. And even though there are three vehicles, there's only one door. This one door represents the Buddhahood, Buddha vehicle. And so then the Buddha describes that coming out of this one door and attaining this one Buddha vehicle, right? Because that's the fruit of our path, is nirvana. Nirvana literally means to extinguish. And so the same way we extinguish our birthday candle, for instance, right? You're blowing out a candle. So we extinguish the faults and the defilements of everything that's in the burning house, which is literally our entire existence. Everything that falls into the three poisons of ignorance, greed, and anger. When we're able to sever that, extinguish those poisons, then we can be on the path of enlightenment. The Buddha describes that the full Buddha, a fully enlightened Buddha, attains anuttara samyak sambodhi, which literally means unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. And then he describes that the first two vehicles of the Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas can have attained perfect awakening, right? And remember, there's three distinctions: unsurpassed, perfect, and complete enlightenment. And so the Shravakas and the Prateka Buddhas have completed the perfect stage of awakening, whereas the Bodhisattvas have attained the complete stage of awakening. And only at Buddhahood, where it's a wondrous awakening, where it's unsurpassed. And so it's unsurpassed, perfect, and complete enlightenment. So each level has a level of perfection, essentially. But at the same time, the concept of nirvana often gives this idea that one must die in order to achieve nirvana. Because nirvana is not a heaven, it's not a destination, it's not a place that we go to after we die, right? It is something that is attainable here and now, right? Just like, think of waves in the ocean. When a wave emerges, it doesn't think to itself, oh, I'm born as a wave, I'm a wave now, and then it crashes and it's like, no, I'm dead now, right? A wave doesn't think like that. A wave is not separate from the water. A wave is water. It's one and the same. Likewise, our suffering and our enlightenment are not separate. They're one and the same. They're here now. They're both attainable here and now. We both have suffering, we both have enlightening moments in our life. If we go, what time is it? Okay, I'll keep this short. If we remember the 6 realms of existence, for instance, right? And the lower 3 realms of hell, hunger, ghosts, and animals, and the 3 higher realms of humans, devas, and asuras. Depending on who you talk to, this is my interpretation, this is my realization of the 6 realms. The 6 realms don't constitute a physical, actual thing or place. Obviously, animals is a real thing. But the idea of these 6 realms are not destinations, they're not coordinates that we go to or are born into. These are states of mind that every single one of us goes through. Right? And so at the human level, the human realm, the 4th level, fourth realm, is our just natural existence. Our natural existence is to be content with life, to be happy, naturally, without anything outside of us giving us any happiness. We're just content and happy as we are. But not every day is like that, right? We have good days, we have bad days. Some days feel like hell on earth, and so we're in a hell realm. Sometimes we're in times where we have to compete or argue with others, and so now we're in the animal realm. Sometimes we're elated, we become very fortunate, maybe we got a really big promotion, or we got something good happen to us, and now we're in the Deva realm. So each realm has specific characteristics, and I won't go through all of them because it's a mouthful. I don't have time for that. But I'm sure I've given a Dharma talk on it once before, so just go back and look for one of my talks. But each realm has specific characteristics of our life. And so when we say we go through these different realms of existence, it just means that we are shifting from one state of mind to another. Clearly, every day is not exactly the same. We don't feel exactly the same every day, right? Every day is a different thing. Whether we feel better or worse or neutral, there's always a distinction of differentiation, of difference. And because there's a distinction of difference, that means we're going through different states of mind. I made a note on here that doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know what I wrote it for. But, okay, I'm going to stop there. The commentary on this chapter is huge. It's one of the longest commentaries in the entire Lotus Sutra. So I obviously don't have time to go through everything. But if we read the full chapter, not our condensed version, you'll see that there is a subtle reference to a lot of different teachings in this one chapter. And it doesn't specifically lay them out specifically, right? So in this case, when it's referring to the three vehicles, we have to dig a little bit deeper and remember or try to know that each vehicle also represents specific teachings and specific practices. So like I mentioned earlier, the Shravakas, us, or the normal sentient beings or humans, our foundational teachings are Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, the Three Dharma Seals, and the 12 Links of Dependent Origination, right? And so when we read the vehicle of Shravakas in the Lotus Sutra, it's referencing to those specific teachings. If it's referencing to the Pratyeka Buddha, it's referencing specifically to the 12 links. If it's referencing to the Bodhisattvas, it's referencing specifically to the Mahayana path specifically, and the Prajnaparamita teachings, which is pretty much everything else. And so there's a lot of other mentions, of course, in this, as far as different achievements and practices and whatnot, but we won't go through that. I will stop there. Otherwise, I can continue on for another 5 hours plus 20. So I won't bore everyone to death. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Yes, sir. I'm sorry? Which vehicle did the Buddha take to his enlightenment? He took all of them. He took all of them. He was already, so if we go back and reference the past lives of the Buddha, for instance, he was always a bodhisattva, right? Because everybody has to be a bodhisattva before they become a Buddha. So he was already a bodhisattva. He was already practicing the bodhisattva path. So he's already surpassed the need for the Shravaka teachings. However, even though he was a bodhisattva in practice, when a enlightened being is reborn, even though they are a bodhisattva, they still have to relearn everything. But relearning it becomes easier and easier because you know it more and more, right? Imagine if you haven't rode a bike in like 30 years. You're like, I don't know if I know how to ride a bike anymore. But then you ride a bike, you struggle for maybe a minute or two, but then everything kind of starts coming back to you, right? So it's kind of the same thing with us, or with our practice. But he teaches, practices, and preaches all three vehicles. And it's mentioned in this chapter and many other chapters that every Buddha, past, present, and future, will always continuously teach upaya, skillful means, via the three vehicles, in order to prepare people for the one Buddha vehicle. imagine him becoming enlightened and then going out and say, everyone can become a Buddha right away, right here now. No one would believe him. You would think he's crazy. He's just one of many hundreds of other ascetics at the time trying to find nirvana, right? And so in order to ease people into the acceptance of that idea of one being able to become a Buddha, he taught the 3 vehicles. So it's the gradual path, essentially. Same thing with us. If you graduate high school, you kind of straight away jump into a PhD program, right? You don't know anything. A PhD program, for the most part, doesn't technically teach you anything new. It just helps you understand and learn more of the things you've already been learning, right? And so, but if you don't know the prerequisites, if you don't know the things that you should have learned in undergrad and graduate school for this PhD program, then you would fail, right? So we have to go gradually in specific steps. Likewise, our practice is the same thing. You can't just wake up one day and be like, okay, I'm going to be a Zen master tomorrow and only meditate once a week for like 10 minutes. That's not going to get you anywhere. That won't even get you Zen'd out. And so we have to take the gradual path. And so all Buddhas take the gradual path and end up at the one Buddha vehicle. Yes, Joseph. I don't understand your question.
Well, you said that he's had many lives, correct?
Mm-hmm.
For being Shakyamuni, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would originally have a first incarnation before eventually becoming later lives, becoming Shakyamuni Buddha. So is there a name for his first incarnation?
There is no first, Joseph. There's no beginning and there's no end. No. But if you go back to, what is it called? The stories of the Buddha's past lives, there's a word for it, I can't think of it. What's that category called? Jataka tells. It tells stories of the Buddha's past lives and his different incarnations. There's like hundreds and thousands of stories, right? And so that's an idea, at least gives us an idea of his past lives, but there's no beginning. So I can't answer that question. Good question, though. Any other questions? Correct.
Okay. So then, if they're fully enlightened, why do they come back again? Because I thought that fully enlightened was the definition of nirvana, and they're done.
Right, but they made a vow to help others, right? And so they're postponing their crossing of the finish line in order to help others get to the finish line. She's a runner, so she gets that. Yes.
So why would you ever stop being a bodhisattva?
Yeah.
Like, why would you ever go to Buddha?
Well, at this time, we haven't reached that point yet. No bodhisattva has become a Buddha yet. It's going to take us into my multiverse theories, but in this kalpa that we're in this universe, right, there can only be one Buddha at a time, right? And no other Buddha can exist until Buddhism is completely gone. But because we still have Buddhism, right, Shakyamuni Buddha is still in existence, right? So no one has become a Buddha after him. The next Buddha will be Maitreya. So when Buddhism has completely disappeared in the universe, Maitreya will be reborn and he'll bring back the teachings. And so there can only be one Buddha at a time that comes into to existence. And so all the present bodhisattvas are kind of just in line waiting for their turn, essentially. If that makes sense. They're on standby. They're on call. Yes. Okay. Now, let's try and think. I want to tell a story, but no. But at the same time, bodhisattvas, even though they're enlightened, you have to remember there's still multiple levels of enlightenment, right? And so for bodhisattvas, there's 10 levels of enlightenment. So even though they're enlightened, they may be enlightened only at the first level, right? And so they don't become fully enlightened as a Buddha until they've reached and attained the 10th level of enlightenment. So even though you're enlightened, you're still harboring some residual defilements like ignorance, for example. Ignorance is the main one, right? So there's still subtle traces of ignorance left in bodhisattvas. And until that's completely eradicated, they can't attain Buddhahood. But they also, at the same time, they also know that, right? And then because they have a vow, they have this altruistic desire or wish to help all other beings attain enlightenment, they're just postponing that full crossing. They're postponing crossing the finish line. Instead, they want to sit back and help others that are struggling to get to the finish line, right? So they're being a good sport versus being selfish and just trying to win for themselves. Otherwise, if you're trying to win for yourself, then you're not really a bodhisattva. You're just in it to win it. But being in it to win it isn't the bodhisattva goal. It can be. If you want to become enlightened and disappear off into nirvana to never be reborn again, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? That's everyone as a Shravaka and Prateka Buddha, as an Arhat. Arhat is the as a Shravaka, your highest attainment is an Arhat. It's still full enlightenment. It's still, you've escaped the cyclic existence of birth and death. You no longer come back, right? But that's still, according to Buddha, that's just an expedient means to teach nirvana. But nirvana isn't the final goal for the bodhisattvas. It's enlightenment, but it's not the enlightenment. It's like graduating from the bachelor's degree program. But some people want a graduate degree. Some people want a PhD degree, right? They want more. But even finishing the undergrad is still an accomplishment, right? No one can take back that accomplishment. It's an accomplishment, but some people want more. And so they go further and further into the practice. I know it's very complicated. And I know that my teaching style is very analytical sometimes compared to our Venerable Abbot, but it is a comprehensive sutra. It has a lot of different distinctions and parables and similes and examples, and it's definitely a handful. And it's not an easy read, but it's a beautiful read. It is a beautiful, beautiful sutra. And even though it's filled with drama and suspense and thrill, that sometimes just seems so out of this world. And a lot of times it does. But we have to remember that the entirety of the way that the Buddha taught is in accordance to his audience. And so every Buddhist teacher has a different method of teaching. I teach differently, obviously, than the teacher does. Alex teaches differently than we do. Leon teaches differently than we. We all have different teaching styles, right? And so the joy of Buddhism, one of the joys of Buddhism, one of the things that I enjoy about Buddhism is that because there are so many different ways of teaching the same teaching, if you don't understand one way, you can find the parallel version of it and see if that one works for you. If you understand it that way, great. If not, you move on to the second one, to another one, and you go on, so on and so forth. We literally have thousands of sutras, of discourses, thousands of them. Okay? It's not one book. It's a volume of 48 books. Each book is like this big. It's incomprehensible. It's nothing that we can go through in one lifetime. But just because something is complicated doesn't mean it's impossible to understand. We're all very smart human beings. We all have the capability and capacity to attain enlightenment. You're here for a reason. Utilize that reason. Right? Continue to learn, continue to read. Things are complicated. Things are complicated until you understand them. The only way to understand them is to study and practice. Right? Okay. I'll stop talking. Way over time. We'll go into the second section of chanting today, which is still technically kind of long. It's okay. All right, so we will chant for the merit, then go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Muni Buddha Namo Shakya Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment.
Sarvasena Jaya